Whether you're a seasoned vet of the payments industry or a brand new rookie who just heard the term dual pricing for the first time, you're in the right place. This is the only podcast that shares the strategies and stories behind selling merchant services, all from the perspective of those on the front lines. Welcome to AgentFirst.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the AgentFirst Podcast. Today is a really special one for me because I'm joined by somebody very close to me. This is Mike Volrath, who, if you can't tell, is also my father. So, Dad, the AgentFirst Podcast, what people love about this, what we love doing is sharing stories of how people got into this industry, right? Because nobody grew up saying, I want to be a credit card processing salesperson when I grow up. Like, that doesn't happen. You know, people just kind of stumble in different ways. And
Sure.
You have a really unique story of how you got into this. So I'd love to kind of kick it off with share the story of how you got into credit card processing.
Okay. Well, early in 2007, you and I were in a business together, Volrath Sales. We decided to close that and decided we needed to find new careers.
Mm-hmm.
You decided very quickly, you already knew that's what you wanted to do, I think, was real estate.
Yep.
And I said, well, I'm not going to do that, so I got to find something else. And I didn't want to go back to plumbing. So I decided I had to find something, and I wanted to have something that had residual income for life. I wanted to find something that was a renewable sale. I wanted to find something that had nothing to do with the economy and nothing to do with the weather. Because I'd worked in plumbing all my life, and the weather and the economy had a lot to do with business, and I wanted out of that. So it took me it was March 9th when we closed the business, and it took me about 2 weeks to find that I wanted to go into credit card processing.
Okay.
And then I went out to some of my old plumbing customers, gathered their statements, told them I thought I was going to get in the business and I'd get them taken care of.
Yeah.
And so I grabbed their statements, and on the 10th one, I got Heartland Payment Systems. And I knew nothing about credit card processing. And in 5 minutes, I understood the statement. So I thought, this seems like the company I want to work.
Pretty easy to read. Yeah.
Yeah. So I called them, and they said, yeah, we can get you on. And they had a guy named Dean Saffers call me. A lot of people know Dean.
Yeah.
And Dean called me, and by the time he called me, I had 2 pages of legal pads of questions. And I started asking him questions, and he says, come on, who do you work for? He said, the questions you're asking me are from somebody that's in the business.
Right.
I don't. He says, really, what do you do? And I said, well, I was a plumber for a long time. He said, oh. I said, well, come on, are you just at least going to meet me? And he goes, well, against my better thought, yes, I'll meet you. So he meets me. We go through. I have more questions now.
Right.
We go through all of them, and he finally says, oh, geez. He says, against my better judgment again. He reached down, grabbed a notebook, said, here's the application. I go, well, don't sound so damn enthused about it. So he hired me, and my first day was supposed to be April 17th. We all know that day in our family because my wife had a brain aneurysm, and I told them I couldn't come to work. They told me I could, and so for the first 5 months, she was in either the hospital or in rehab.
Yep.
And so I didn't get a whole lot done, but I did. She was in the ICU, and we could only go in, 10 minutes every hour, something like that.
Yep.
So I called up one of my mechanics, and I said, listen, I'm going to sign you up for credit card processing. He goes, no, you're not. I said, yeah, I am. And he goes, all right, what do you need? So I told him everything I needed. I went down, picked it up, brought it back to the hospital, called my boss at the time, and I said, hey, I need you to come down and help me sign this app. He goes, what app? Did you sign the hospital up? I said, no, I signed my mechanic. He says, but you're at the hospital. I said, dude, I told you when I came on board, I was broke.
Right.
I said, I got to work. So I got this app. You going to come help me fill it out or not? So he did. He came down, helped me fill it out, and that's how I signed my first deal up. And I did that for like 5 months. So
And who was that customer? The name of the mechanic, do you remember?
that was Town and Country.
On Southeast 14th in Des Moines, Iowa.
And
right?
he says, well, I'm not going to sign up with you. He says, here's how it goes, Mike. He says, you credit card guys are all a bunch of crooks. And I says, well, I don't know that I'm going to be that. And he goes, well, you won't, but you know what I mean. I said, well, tell me. And he says, they come in, they walk in the door, they're going to save you a bunch of money. They take your credit card statement for 2 or 3 days and do God only knows what, come back, tell you they're going to save you a nickel. send you a terminal, and then you have to figure out how to make the damn thing work.
Right.
And that takes 2 or 3 days.
Right.
And then in 6 months, I'm paying more than I was before. He said, it's a vicious cycle. I go, so here's my question for you then. When I bring my truck in, I don't know what's wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
And you do God only knows what to it for 2 or 3 days. And then you tell me it's going to cost me $1,500. And then I tell you, go ahead and you do it and it costs $1,700. Does this sound like what you're saying? He goes, geez, I said, just shut up and sign the deal. I'm going to take care of you.
Right.
And that's how I signed up. I didn't save him any money. I
Yep.
just took care of him. And
Yep.
that's how I started out in the business.
So, all right. So back up a little bit there. I think it's something you glanced over, but it's not something to be glanced over. Your first 6 months, I know this because obviously I was there. So your first 6 months of the business and actually your entire career in this business, but the first 6 months specifically, you're dealing with your wife in the hospital, not even sure if she's going to make it or survive, right? So you're dealing with that, trying to start a new career, and also, correct me if I'm wrong, remodeling a house because your parents are getting ready to move. Your aging parents are getting ready to move in also.
Yeah, we put a small 5,000 square foot.
Yeah. So just a little addition, right?
Yeah.
So there are people out there that are struggling with, man, I can't go do this because, some small little thing. You had some massive obstacles there. How did you overcome those things?
Yeah, it was funny. There's a lot of people that would say that we'd be at a convention. They go, "Oh, Mike, you got it so easy. That's why you've done so well." And I go, well, probably not the thing to say. So let's talk about that. So, yeah, it was unique, but it's just one of those things that you figure out what works. And I was blessed that I knew a lot of people. So in the first 6 months, I didn't have to do a lot of cold calling. I got by with calling people I knew, and that's how I got started out. Well, then once I did that, then it got a lot easier because then I would go back to them and ask them for referrals. So I didn't ever have to cold call a whole lot. So, it makes it look a lot easier when you don't have to do that.
Right.
And if you don't have to cold call, you get warm leads, you close a lot more of them too. So, so it worked out pretty well. I signed in my first year, 100 accounts.
100 accounts your first year. So a little over 8 a month.
Yeah.
While dealing with, recuperating wife, the house, parents moving in.
And they made me a territory manager.
That's right.
In 7 months.
That's right. You had to manage people too. I forgot about that. That's right. So you're driving all over. Was it just Eastern Iowa or were you
territory manager? I was still in Des Moines.
Okay.
Then they made me the division manager over Eastern Iowa.
Eastern Iowa. Yeah, that's right.
That was a loser.
Yeah, that's right.
And
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. I remember this. So now I assume you had owned a business for many, many years. So when you got rid of the old business, we got rid of Volrath sales, and you moved into this new career, you had a bunch of cash. I mean, you were probably rich, right?
So Dean Saffris, this was his comment every time he hired somebody. So this takes a while to get this ramped up. So how much cash do you have? How long can you go without getting a check? And I go, well, let me see. Today's Wednesday, right? And he goes, yeah. I said, I can make her till Friday. Because I said, I'm broke. I got to make money.
Right.
Yeah, we closed the business down because it wasn't doing real well.
Right. Yeah, there was not any savings.
We were factory reps. They kept taking things away from us to sell.
Right.
So no, I didn't have anything. I had to get it going. So that was one of the things that I was pretty successful at doing is I set goals, small goals. First thing I wanted was, holy shit, I got to have insurance. I got to have health insurance because this is bad.
Right.
So that was the first. I had to make enough money that my residual income would pay for my health insurance. And then the next thing was I wanted to pay for that and the house payment and stuff like that. So it was just a lot of goal setting.
Just building those residuals step by step, little goal, little goal.
Yeah, and the first one I was not convinced I was in the right job. It was 99 cents. That was my first residual check.
That's awesome. Everybody remembers their first one. Yeah, absolutely.
It got a little bit
absolutely.
Bigger than that, fortunately.
That's awesome. Well, I think there's a lot of really wisdom in that part of it, right? I think people get in this industry and they look at somebody, like yourself that, or many other people that have been massively successful and say, oh my gosh, you're making all this money. How do I ever get there? But, starting with those little goals, right? Like, let me make enough to pay for, my insurance first, or maybe pay for my car payment, or my Netflix subscription, or whatever, if you're really shooting low. But those step-by-step goals are pretty important, right?
Those are the way to go. And you have to remind yourself, like a guy told me one time, and it was a brilliant statement. I assume I'm unemployed every day until I set an appointment or sign a deal. He says, because I don't have a job if I'm not signing something. So that was a brilliant thing. And another guy taught me when I went to a class one time in Chicago. The guy said, the only time that price is an issue is in the absence of value.
Yep.
Which is a big thing because everybody wants to focus on price.
Right.
And I never did that.
Right.
Because, in fact, I sold a product one time that was a commodity-based product, and I made the biggest sale they'd ever had in their company, and I resigned the day after. And he goes, why you resign? I says, the guy was arguing with me over a quarter of a cent.
Right.
I said, I've never done that in my life.
Right.
I sell stuff for more money than other people sell it for
Right.
because I sell value-added products. So this business ended up being very good because I could do that. I could sell value and I didn't have to give away profit.
Right.
So it worked out really well for that. But having goals, like setting an appointment every day. If you set an appointment every day, you're going to have 20 in a month. If you close 50% of them, you're going to sell 10. It's it's a matter of metrics that you set up for yourself, and then you can do very well if you get those and you just stick to it.
So literally within the last 3 or 4 days, I had a conversation with somebody who is thinking about getting into this industry, and they were just really just loving everything about it, loved the residual income, loved all these aspects of it. But their but the quote to me was, I'm 35. It's too old to restart. And you were 52, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? 52 years old and restarting this whole thing. So what would you say to that guy? What would you say to that?
It's actually 55.
I'm sorry, 55. It was 2007. I'm sorry, 55. Yeah, so you're 55 years old, walking away from basically the career you had for most of your life, if not all your life, plumbing and septic-related products. And you're starting over completely from scratch in an industry you know nothing about at 55 years old. What would you say to that 35-year-old kid that I just mentioned that said, I'm too old to restart this?
Yeah, that's silly. That's silly because it grows so quickly if you do it. And you and I have done this before where we sat and showed people on paper, if you do this, this will happen. If you keep doing this, this keeps multiplying like this. And then if you take care of your customers, you're not going to lose 25% a year. You're going to lose 5% a year. And you go through those numbers and be realistic about it. And you can do very well, very quickly in this business if you just stick to doing the things that we know works.
Right.
If you go out every day and you set an appointment every day, you're going to be successful. And you go back and you do quality assurance reviews. The job gets very easy, and the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Let's talk about that. 'Cause I was just about to bring that up. I'm glad you said that. Is that one of the most, obviously when I got in this industry, I learned from you. It wasn't quite as easy for me because I grew up I joined 3 years later in Des Moines, Iowa. You had already pillaged my entire obviously network of people and taken them. So I had to go cold calling a little bit. But I know it was hard. Feel sorry for me, please. But the thing you taught me that was immensely impactful was the concept of the quality assurance review. And I think that is something that very few people do today, that I think if people that are out there listening to this podcast, I think it'd be huge for people. Talk about that and how that benefited you.
Sure. Well, when I first started, in the first 6 months, I earned a trip to San Antonio. And I went down there and I had no money whatsoever. I shouldn't have went on the trip, but I went on the trip and I met a guy that for the last 3 years had been the top seller at Heartland. And
What was his name?
I'm in Licata.
Yep.
And I'm not above pillaging information from people. I will ask people all day long, how do you do this? And try to learn something. And the guy said, well, Mike, he says, I eat like 4 meals a day. I said, so what? He says, well, I eat soup at a lot of them. But he said, I go into restaurants, I sit down, I watch the business, I see how it's going, and I sell them. And at the time, he sold them on one thing, on their access to their account. He just thought that was the best thing in the world and showed people how cool it was and what they could see. And then he says, after I sell them, their first statement comes up, I would print it out. I'd go back in, show him the statement. And he said, I actually had a questionnaire, quality assurance review. And I asked him like 10 questions. And every question was designed for them to say yes. If I did my job right, it was yes. At the end of that, I'd say, now listen, it sounds like it was a pretty good experience for you. He goes, well, yeah. I said, was it better than you thought it was going to be? Well, yeah. He said, you did stuff that nobody's done for me. Like you put the terminal in.
Right.
So he said, that was awesome. He says, well, understand, I only make money when I sell more deals.
Mm-hmm.
So I need 4 referrals. And he goes, oh man, I'm really busy. I go, shut up, open your phone and start a day. And we get 4, and he'd give me their names and their cell phone numbers. I'd say, okay, that's great. And I'd write them all down. And I'd say, all right, now I need you to call them. Come on, I don't have time to call them. And I would go, because he taught me this. I'd say, listen, this is why you need to call them. I used to own a plumbing company, and there'd be a guy walk in the door, the salesman. I hated salesmen coming in the door. Everybody does. And he'd say, listen, I'm selling duct tape today.
Mm-hmm.
How many cases do you need? And I'd say, listen, I just got my duct tape.
Yeah.
But you know what? Bill down at the hardware store up here in Pleasant Hill, he just told me the other day we were having coffee that he was really short on that. You go see Bill.
Uh-huh.
And he'd walk out the door and we'd all laugh.
Yeah.
Because Bill didn't want duct tape.
Right.
So I said, now, have you ever done that? The customer would say, well, sure. Then how is this guy not going to know that I'm the real deal?
Right.
And he should actually talk to me. So he'd say, okay. So I would actually get, out of every deal I sold within a month, I would get 4 warm referrals.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get 4 more warm referrals, that means the next month I'm getting 16.
Mm-hmm.
So every month I had warm referrals and I didn't have to cold call.
Right.
And a warm referral gets you a lot more closes than a cold call does.
Right.
Now, cold call's a game. Some
Yeah.
people like it. Everybody has a different style, and I'm not going to tell you need to do it my way, but it worked pretty well for me.
Right.
And some people like to cold call. I hated it.
Yeah.
I just don't like that. You walk in, I did a cold call one time and the guy says, no, the owner's not here. We stood there for about 2 minutes and he finally says, I said, you're the owner. Shit. And he goes, yeah. And I signed him up, and then I signed him up for 4 different products.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. So, and I think that's a huge thing, that quality assurance review. And even if you don't feel comfortable about doing it, because I remember, teaching this, and we still talk about it today. I mean, I know you recently had a conversation with somebody about this, because they told me, they were like, it was mind change, or just life changing for them when they learned this concept. And so the even if you don't feel comfortable saying, hey, I need to have these 4 referrals, even if you walk out of there with 1 referral, right, it's better than nothing, And so there's lots of opportunities there for sure.
Well, and sometimes, just to be fair, I didn't get 4 referrals the first day. Sometimes you say, listen, Mike, you've been here an hour. I got shit I got to do.
Right. Yeah.
And I might have to go back 2 or 3 times.
Sure.
Now, when I was learning that from this guy down in San Antonio, there was another new agent there, and he goes, you go back how many times? He goes, however many times it takes to get the 4 referrals.
Right.
He goes, well, I don't have time for that shit. He says, you don't have time to go back and get 4 warm referrals? He goes, no. He says, oh, you go cold call then. And he said, well, yeah. He says, you need to think about that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So it takes time to do that, but it's so worth it. Because then when I walk into that merchant, they go, oh, Bill sent you over, Mike. I go, yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'd have statements ready. They'd be ready to go.
Right.
So because they knew I was coming in, they knew they needed to talk to me.
Right. So you had a long, strong career in this industry, and I know you're retired now, but you still do a lot to help out a lot of people in this industry. You still give a lot of advice. A lot of people still call you, including myself, looking for guidance and advice. During that 15 years, you've had a lot of customers come and go. You've coached hundreds of people on that same sort of thing. What do you think is the secret sauce on retaining customers? I mean, that's great, awesome. We sign them up, they're here, but now what, right? How do you make sure that those customers are not leaving and switching to somebody else?
You have
playing that money
you
game.
have to be present. I mean, if you sign up somebody, like when I would go in and see people, one of the things I'd say is, when's the last time you saw the rep that signed you up?
Right.
I love that question because most of the time it was,
Yeah, when I signed up.
I go, well, how long have you been with them? Well, 8 years. Well, that was the last time you saw the guy, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if you want to differentiate yourself, you want to take care of your customer, understand that when you leave, you start going down in their memory.
Right.
So if I go back and I signed up with dry cleaners, that's why I took my dry cleaning. Signed up restaurants. Restaurants were a big part of my portfolio. I ate at all of my customers frequently.
Right.
So, I mean, going back and seeing them, even if you don't need anything, is a really good idea. And then once a year, I would take them out a statement. And they didn't really want to look at it. Usually they go, Mike, do I need to look at it? I go, you don't need to, but I want you to see that I haven't changed anything and it's still the same. You're paying the same you were before. And if you got any questions on it, we can go through it. And sometimes they would, but most of the time they go, Mike, they're in a drawer, in an envelope, like the ones were when I signed up with you.
Right.
I'm not looking at them.
Yeah.
I said, as long as you don't talk to anybody else, that's okay.
Right.
So that's a big thing, is just being present, you know?
Yep.
So, I mean, people used to say to me, well, I signed up this guy, and, I'm in Iowa. I signed up this guy in Colorado. I go, you're not going to keep him.
Right.
Because you can't be present.
To develop a local relationship.
That's what it takes. Like I saw a guy one time an hour and a half from Des Moines, which was a long ways for me. And he goes, well, you're not local. You're from Des Moines. I'm up here in Algona. I go, well, yeah. But the guy you're with now, where's he from? He says, oh, he's from Minneapolis. I go, that's 3 hours.
Right.
I go,
Right.
I think I'm local then.
Right.
So, I mean, it's all relative, but you got to be present. I had a merchant that was an hour and a half in Clarion, Iowa, coal-fired pizza.
Yeah.
We would go eat at his place once a month.
Yeah, you always went there. Yeah,
I liked it.
Love that place.
Yeah, I liked it. It was good food, but I mean, we were present, and he knew that.
Right,
you know? So, I mean, that's what it's all about. And if they call, you have to take the call. And if you don't, you're with somebody, you got to call them back in a couple of minutes.
But isn't it easier just to give them an 800 number and say, here's the 800 number, call them, and, those people are going to take care of you?
Well, it's easier, but you don't keep customers that way.
Right.
You keep customers by, my merchants knew they had one call to make. And I told them that. I said, listen, when you sign up with me, you don't have to do the 800 call and do the touch tone 2-step to figure out who to get a hold of and then tell them all over who you are, and you got to give them your merchant ID number 3 times. All you have to do is pick up the phone and go, God damn it, Mike, it's not working. Fix it. And I'd say, well, what's it doing? I'd figure out what it was. And then I would, if I had to call in or whatever I had to do, I would do that so they didn't have to. Like if they said, hey, I'm out of paper right now. Like they'd call me up and they go, hey, Mike, the thing won't print out. I go, okay. I said, open up. Remember how to open the lid in the back? He goes, oh, shit, I'm out of paper. So, okay, there we go. So it's really important about creating that atmosphere of them realizing you're the guy.
Right.
I got known as, it's Mike, the credit card guy.
Right. Absolutely.
And I took care of all of their stuff.
I love that.
So you want them calling you, not the service center. Now, there might be a time where I say, listen, I'm on a call. I'm going to be here for a little bit. You want to call in if they can help you. If not, I'll call you back as soon as I get out of here.
Sure.
And I would give them that option. But most of the time, I wanted the call.
Right.
I want them to call me.
Right.
I want them to know me.
Well, I think one of the things I remember you teaching me that I used throughout my career and still talk about today when coaching people was that sharing with that business owner how you're paid, right? Because, I think we're used to, okay, the salesperson sells me a car, sells me furniture, or whatever. They make their commission and, they don't care about me ever again until I'm ready to buy another car or another piece of furniture, right? But our industry, that's not how it works.
Sure. I used to tell people, I'd say, listen, here's what I want you to understand. I want you to understand how I get paid. I sign you up and I get nothing. Now, I'm going to give you a terminal and understand that's out of my pocket.
Right.
That's not the company giving you. That's me giving you that terminal. So it's mine.
Right.
But here's what I want you to understand then. Every month, I get a small portion of the profits off of this business. So essentially, and I hate to tell you this, I'm working for you.
Right.
They go, oh, God, I love that. I said, let's not remember that any more than right now. Just understand that that's why I'm going to take the call is because I don't want my check to get smaller. And if you leave, my check gets smaller. I want my check to get bigger every month. So that's why every now and then, even though you gave me 4 when I signed up, your business 6 months ago, every now and then I'm going to ask you for another one.
Sure.
And I did, and they would give them to me then. You know?
Yeah.
So, and they would send me people. They'd call me and send me people. Hey, Bill's building a place next door. You know, and we'd get it, and that's how you really grow is you get referrals from people automatically without even asking for it. They would give you those. But I would tell them that. I'd say, you know, I'm working for you, and they go, oh, okay, and they like that. And I said, now here's the difference. The guy you're with now, you haven't seen in 8 years, he got a great big signing bonus.
Yeah.
He got paid a bunch of money, and he doesn't give a crap if he ever talks to you again.
Right.
Because they aren't taking it back.
Right.
So he just goes out and signs up another one. So you'll find guys that'll sign, you know, I sign 100 in a year. They sign 300 in a year. Mm-hmm. And they don't care if there's any profit in it. They don't care if they're saving them money. They don't care if the terminal works because it's a one-off sale.
Right.
Or if they're salaried.
Right. Yeah.
It's just
even
as
worse.
bad.
Yeah. Even worse.
Yeah.
Even worse for sure.
And then you had, back in the day, they used to have a lot of companies. They didn't make much off the processing, but they made it off of terminals. So they loved leasing terminals.
Yeah.
And that was how they made it. We had a guy we hired one time, Joe. Remember Joe?
Oh, yeah.
Big
Joe.
Big
Joe, yeah.
He made $180,000 and
Leasing
$150,000 was off the terminals.
Yeah.
Leasing terminals. So again, we didn't lease terminals.
Yeah.
You need a terminal, here's a terminal.
One last question for you, and then we're going to probably wrap it up here is over the last, 15 plus years, you've been, longer than that, 18 years. You've been around this industry. You've obviously seen a lot of changes, right?
Sure.
And if you were talking to the, young whippersnappers of today getting into this that were complaining about whatever, what would you say to that person? What would be that piece of advice you would give them that would be, say, hey, here's why you should stick with it. Here's that person who's struggling, that person who thinks, they don't have a good manager, they're struggling for whatever reason, maybe thinking about just, walking away completely. What's that piece of advice you would give them?
It's a couple of things. Well, the first thing is you can make this job what you want. Mm-hmm. You're working for a company, but you're working for yourself. And so you can go stand in front of the mirror and say, Mike, I want an increase in my paycheck this month. And then you can go out and earn it. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to make any more, don't go work. Mm-hmm. But then your check's going to go down because it's a living, breathing organism there that if you don't sell, you're going to lose somebody.
Right.
Maybe no fault of your own. So, I mean, that's the thing to me is if you're motivated and you want to do better, this is a company that you're not in a corporate structure where somebody is telling you this is how much you're going to get. And in a year, we'll do a quality assurance review and see how you're doing. And then we'll see if we'll give you a 4% increase.
Right.
I said, you could make 100% increase every year. So just know that you can do that and know that whatever you decide, if you really believe in it, you're going to do it. Mm-hmm. So if you put something up on the mirror that every day you look at it and see it, I'm going to sign 4 deals this week. You can do it. Mm-hmm. You just have to adjust your schedule to make it happen. So to me, the biggest thing is if you're not afraid of talking to people, and I've hired people that were, so that didn't work out well. But if you're not afraid of talking to people, the sky's the limit in this, and the retirement is the best retirement you'll ever get.
Right, that's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I had a company that I don't work for the last 8 years, and I'm still getting checks from them.
That's crazy. That's
a
awesome.
Wonderful thing.
That's awesome. Well, we're gonna wrap it up, but I want to, before we do, thank you for bringing me into this industry and helping me find this and helping guide me and coach me and lead me through this, because none of this would be here. Pay Compass wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here without you and your belief in me. So thanks a lot.
No problem. You're welcome.
Everybody, thanks for another great Agent First podcast, and we'll wrap it up.
All righty.